Let me tell you about ProHealthConnect.com. It's transforming healthcare payments, providing retailers a seamless process for over-the-counter and healthy benefit programs. By connecting retailers, health plans, and payment processors, ProHealth Connect creates one powerful, unified network. They empower independent grocers and pharmacies to accept health benefit cards without changing how they do business. With over 10,000 locations nationwide, helping more than 1.3 million people access the care and nutrition they need. Go to ProHealthConnect.com.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hello, folks. I'm Larry Kudlow. This is the Larry Kudlow Show, and it's a great pleasure to be with you this weekend. It's beautiful where we are in New York City. And, of course, the New York Knicks 2-0 against San Antonio. Tough game, but they held on. Anyway, let me put in an ad. You can, first of all, hear us on this show on the radio, live stream us over the internet. LarryKudlowShow.com, LarryKudlowShow.com. You catch us all across the country, around the world, throughout the solar system, including the Milky Way. During the week, please. Fox Business, fabulous Fox Business Network. Name of the show is Kudlow, 4 to 5 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday, 4 to 5 p.m. And if for some reason you can't make it at 4, just text your favorite 9-year-old, and she will show you how to DVR the show. You'll never miss a thing. Never miss a thing. Business is booming under Trump. Business is booming under Donald Trump. That's the opening theme. Theme of the whole show, really. Business is booming. Jobs are booming. Investment is booming. Productivity is booming. All the naysayers are wrong, despite a bump up, a temporary bump up in wartime prices, gasoline principally. And I know it hurts some people. I don't like it either. Pay $4, $4.50, whatever, $5 diesel. That will be temporary. But the economy is growing somewhere between 3 and 4%. Jobs are booming. Wages are rising. Even ahead of the inflated CPI. Yesterday's jobs report, enormous. 172,000 jobs. Last 3 months averaging 188,000. In fact, the prior months were revised higher by 93,000. Almost 100,000 upward revision. Fantastic stuff. And I want to make a point here. Hopefully this is some kind of teaching moment, because people don't understand. All these overeducated, left-wing macroeconomists, people in the media, all they talk about is consumers this and consumers that, and consumer spending. All right, that's important, but that is not what drives the economy. What drives the economy is business. So I say business is booming. Why is that important? Because it's businesses that create jobs. And businesses must be profitable. They must be making money in order to hire and give pay increases, pay hikes. This is as simple as it gets, but you hardly ever see this. People say, well, consumer spending is this, so the economy is going to do that. By the way, consumer spending is good, solid right now. But the reason we're creating so many jobs and the unemployment rate is so low is the health of business. And the reason Donald Trump is so important here is that as a former businessman, he understands how the economy works, how the economic engine works. You must free up business. So what does he do? He cuts taxes on business. He reduces the government's regulation on business, eases up on the paperwork, lets people go out and build, explore, frack, drill, you name it. Profits, which is a dirty word on the left. Profits are the mother's milk of stocks and the lifeblood of the economy. You've heard me say this a million times, but I'm going to say it again. Now, the stock market, got clipped yesterday. Interest rate fears. We'll get to that later. I'm not worried about stocks at all because profits are huge. Profits are growing 25% year on year. That matches the stock market gain even after yesterday's correction. It was due for a correction. But my point is, Democrats, people on the left like to attack profits like it's evil. It's too profitable. You can't have a healthy business if it's not making money. And making money is another way of saying profits. I mean, just figure, look, if you're running a candy store, okay, and you're ahead, you're making money, you could hire an assistant or two, or maybe expand into groceries or meats and hire a couple people to do that. You only can do that if the business is profitable, if it is making money. That's the way free enterprise works. Government doesn't do it. Government can't possibly do it. And consumer spending is the end of the chain. So think about it this way. I'm running a business, whatever it is, and I'm making money. I have 10, 12 employees. I'm producing widgets. The widgets are popular. People are buying them. So I want to make more widgets. Well, if I'm profitable, I can hire a couple more people, or I can go out and buy some new machinery and produce more widgets. And by the way, if I'm making money, profits, then I give my workers a raise, a pay raise. Higher wages. Higher wages comes from profits. I'm going to tell you right now, because the economy is so profitable, low taxes, minimal regulation, animal spirits from a presidential leader who encourages business to grow and expand and innovate, who understands the need to reward success, not punish it. Here in New York, California, they want to punish success. They want to tax wealth. They want to tax capital. They want to tax profits. They want to tax everything that moves. That's no good. But in the southern states, Texas, Oklahoma, Florida, Alabama, etc., the Carolinas, there's low taxes, the red states. So they're producing and growing. So if they'll go back to my model, my store grows because I'm making money. I hire new people. I pay them more. And then what? Well, if I pay them more, that's the money they take home. That's the income for working folks, right? A pay hike, a wage hike. That's the kitchen table. And then from the kitchen table, the family goes out and spends on whatever they want. That's consumer spending. You follow me? This process starts with a healthy, profitable business. Profits. Then more hires, more jobs. Then higher wages. You get a pay, you get a salary, you get a raise, okay? An old-fashioned raise. And then that raise goes to the family. It increases their income and they go out and they spend. That's consumer spending. But the chain starts with business. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Now, look, these numbers are terrific. We're creating jobs like, nobody believed we could do this. Of course we can do it. These are supply side, pro-business, supply side policies. Trump is pro-business, and business is booming. American business is booming. We are a job-creating machine. No other country is doing this. One big, beautiful bill passed about a year ago. What's today? June what? 5th, 6th? Whatever today is. We passed that bill, was signed July 4th, 2025, 1 year ago. It lowered taxes on businesses, also lowered taxes on individuals, lowered taxes on families with kids, lowered taxes, no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, lowered taxes on seniors, lowered taxes on auto buyers, car buyers. By the way, the refunds, which were supposed to come in at about $100 billion, come in about $175 billion. Fantastic stuff.
Almonte's Key Food, proudly serving communities throughout Brooklyn, Queens, and Long Island for over 30 years. When you shop Key Food, you'll always find fresh products, great weekly specials, and exceptional personalized service. Visit at any of their Key Food stores at 8235 153rd Avenue, Lindenwood, New York, 935 Rosedale Road, Valley Stream, New York, and 6620 Avenue U, Brooklyn, New York.
Healthy economy. Some numbers from the jobs report yesterday. I told you 172,000. Last 3 months, 188,000. Here's an important point, which the newspapers, media get wrong. Wages, okay? They look at average hourly earnings. I got time to do this? Yeah, okay. They look at average hourly earnings. All employees. 12-month change is 3.4%. And then they say, well, that's underwater because the CPI for the 12 months in April, the month behind, but we'll use that, is 3.8. But it's a calculation that's wrong. You have to take hourly earnings times hours worked. Hourly earnings times hours worked. Hours worked are going up by almost a percentage point. So what you got is, in round numbers, about 4.5. No, I'll be exact. For manufacturing production workers, 12-month change in wages is 3.6% plus 0.8% increase in hours worked. That's a lot. It's almost 1 point. That's a 4.4% increase in total wages. It's called the wage income proxy. That is above the 3.8% CPI. All right, 4.4 is higher than 3.8. Now, that 3.8 CPI is not going to last. It's a temporary bump because of the Iran war. We will talk about that, as always, later in the show. Actually, gasoline prices are starting to come down. Actually, energy prices, WTI, West Texas energy oil is coming down about 20% so far. There'll be a lot more coming. But my point is, if you calculate the wages right, they're almost 1 point ahead of temporarily inflated CPI. But I want to come back just to wrap this. I want to come back. Keep your eye on profits. Keep your eye on profits, folks. Profits create jobs. Profits create higher wages because they make businesses healthy. It's so important. Profits are the mother's milk of stocks and the lifeblood of the economy. Profits create consumer spending because you get a pay increase for the family. And my old friend and mentor, the late Congressman and HUD Secretary and Vice Presidential candidate Jack Kemp, beloved Jack Kemp, loved him. But Jack used to always say, the trouble with Democrats is they like jobs. They just hate the businesses that create the jobs because they tax them to death. And I want to wrap up by saying this jobs report, which was so spectacular, with rising wages, this is the Republicans' best selling point, their midterms' best weapon for the GOP. They should talk about it, sell it, market it. They're not, and it's crucial. President Trump is, but the senators and the House members are all confused and running around and doing dumb things. This job wage success is the best midterm weapon the GOP has. Get on it, folks, and you'll win. I'm Kudlow. We'll take a break. Be right back.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Here's a snapshot of President Trump yesterday. He's in Chippewa Falls. Chippewa Falls. For a rally. Anyways, he's talking to farmers in Chippewa Falls. Where's Chippewa? I believe it's in Wisconsin, but I'm not sure. Hang on a second. Let me just look at this. Wait a second. Yeah, Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. Good for you, Larry. Anyway, he says, in a single month, we added 7,000 new manufacturing jobs, and 17,000 new construction jobs. And he's right. You can check the numbers. Those are big numbers. We're building more plants than any time in the history of our country. We have $18 trillion of investment coming into the United States. Wages for workers continue to rise. And manufacturing workers, wages are up more than 8% since I took office. He is correct, but he is a lonely voice. The rest of the GOP has got to get behind him. This booming economy is their best weapon for the midterms in November. I'm Kudlow. We'll be back with more.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So I want to continue the discussion on businesses booming, and it's the best midterm weapon the GOP has, even though you wouldn't know it because they're not talking about it. The president is, as I said, maybe we'll find his quote from Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. By the way, I knew it was in Wisconsin. No question about it. We're going to bring in my great pal, John Carney, who was the Breitbart news editor for economics and finance. He's a co-author of the daily Breitbart Business Digest, which is a fabulous product, and you should subscribe to it. Hell, I wouldn't give it away for free. I'd charge $100,000 a year for it. Make John rich. He's also a resident of Reading, Connecticut, which is a very important place. So, John, I'm talking about business. The first point I want to make is, and people do not understand how the economy works. In order to create jobs, you have to have a business that is making money, profits. The mother's milk of stocks and the lifeblood of the economy. It's not consumers. Consumer spending is the end result. You get good, you're making money, you're making profits, you can hire more workers, produce more widgets, you can give them pay raises. That goes to the family around the kitchen table, and that's the income for consumer spending. You follow what I'm saying? Most economists, macroeconomists, especially from these northeastern and bi-coastal colleges and their media people, they start with consumers. You can't. You got to start with the health of business. And what the jobs report said yesterday is business is very strong in the United States, and Trump's policies of easing the burden on business, the tax and regulatory burden, is in large measure responsible for this. Also, and I'm going to get to this, his trade policies, his reciprocity trade policy. But the key point, John, is it's business and it's profits that create jobs, and we're seeing the terrific results.
I think that's absolutely right. It's one of the reasons why so many economists why we keep getting these underestimations of the jobs numbers, because they look at it backwards, right? They think, well, as you were saying, they don't understand that what happens when you get numbers like increased productivity, for instance, that actually doesn't make businesses hire fewer people. It makes them hire more because every person you bring on becomes more profitable for your business. And so what we're seeing is we've seen, particularly in manufacturing, we've seen really great productivity numbers. We've seen that there is because of that, we're seeing higher profits throughout the economy, but particularly in manufacturing. And we're seeing a output surge, and that's actually delivering a wage surge that gives people, as you were saying, and that's the way it works. You get profits, you get productivity, profits, wages surge, which allows people to buy more, so you get more consumer spending. But that's the order to look at it in, which is the flow from profits into wages rather than the other way around.
I know it's a funny thing. It's just it's very old-fashioned business economics. Now, sometimes it's called supply side, but there used to be in the profession in academia, you would look at business economics, but people don't do that. Macroeconomics misses these points, and as you say, has the whole story backwards. Now, you're writing Trump economy delivers for blue-collar boom. Manufacturing real wages soar. And this is very, very important because people are bad-mouthing the manufacturing sector. The reality is manufacturing, construction is up, factories are up, John. All this is, putting working folks back to work.
That's right. And one of the things that I went through a lot of historical data on this when we got the jobs numbers, and also the pay numbers. So first of all, overtime for manufacturing is up. That's a sign of a rising demand for manufacturing workers. They can't hire enough of them, so they're saying, here's some more overtime. And by the way, the overtime got a tax cut. So even the wage numbers we're seeing, which are great, are even better than they look because people are keeping more of the average hourly wage than they used to. They're keeping more of the overtime than they used to. I actually think there's actually probably a supply side effect for the overtime, meaning workers are more willing to put in overtime because they're keeping more of it. When the government takes half your overtime pay away, you say, well, maybe I'd rather, hang out with the family, go fishing, do a lot of other things. When you get to keep more of it, people will work more. That's the classic supply side Laffer curve applied to overtime wages.
That's exactly right. You tax something less, you get more of it. You tax overtime less, you're going to get more overtime. It's exactly right. The jobs boom, you're running 188,000 the last 3 months. We haven't seen that in quite a while. as you wrote in your piece last night. The other thing, John, wages. When you look at wages, you can't just look at average hourly earnings. You have to put in hours worked. These are hourly earnings, so you have to multiply that times hours worked. They don't do that. I mean, even some people in my own shop don't do that. So I'm just looking here for, let's stay with the manufacturing story. Production workers, average hourly earnings for production workers. Last 12 months, John, 3.6%. Now, some people say 3.6%. That's less than the April CPI, which was 3.8%, temporary energy from the Iran war. But if you add hours worked, which increased for production workers by 0.8%, almost 1 full percentage point, then the wage proxy is 4.4%, which even with the wartime energy is still ahead of the CPI, 3.8. 4.4 is higher than 3.8. I don't know why these reporters don't understand. You have to take hourly earnings plus hourly hours worked. I mean, what's wrong with them?
So I did the calculation, and what real weekly pay, so that means after inflation, is up 3.5%.
Oh.
So people are doing extraordinarily well. Nominal pay for durable goods factory workers, that's what I'm talking about here, is up 7.4% from a year ago. Oh. You take out the inflation number, and by the way, hourly pay, this is exactly what you're talking about. Hourly pay is only up 5.3% nominally. But because people are working more, you have the weekly pay, which is what matters. That's what actually shows up in the paycheck. That's what pays the bills. It's not just hourly pay. And that is up 3.5%. It's been very rare for decades that we saw that kind of weekly real pay raise. In fact, the only time we regularly saw it, look, this is, that's a year-over-year number. Maybe it fades, particularly if we get a bad president in the future. Maybe we don't keep up this. The Democrats could do their best to try to derail everything. But the last time we saw gains solidly at this level for durable goods manufacturing was back in 1947 to 1969. We are back to the post-World War II boom times. And by the way, that led to a baby boom. People are worried about fertility in the United States. People are saying, will we have enough young people in the future? The key to everything is let manufacturing, particularly durable goods manufacturing, boom, provides good jobs for young men. That actually solves a lot of your economic problems, a lot of your social problems.
You're writing here, real durable goods. That's like manufacturing output.
Yep.
Not food. It's not food. It's widgets.
That's right.
Data centers or with stuff that goes into data centers. It's farming equipment. Anyway, real durable goods output grew at a 5.8% annualized rate in the first quarter, while productivity surged at 5.5%. So my point, this is a booming economy. Business is booming profitably, and the economy is booming. And it's like this is an awakening for the media. I mean, nobody's talking. By the way, John, I don't want to politicize it altogether, but the fact is, all these Republican leaders, they're all squirreling around. They can't get a decent reconciliation fiscal bill in Congress. They're worried about William Pulte. They're worried about Justice Department funds, which, by the way, have been around for a while. Nobody's talking about the economy and the blue collars and the working folks. I had Kellyanne Conway on the TV show. She was my lead yesterday, and she just came out and said these numbers, this is the best weapon the Republicans have in the midterm elections. And you're digging in here, blue collar workers. People work with their hands. which left the Democratic Party. You got to bring them back. You got to get them to the polls. The GOP should be talking about this stuff because it's really quite remarkable. I quoted Jack Kemp, the late, great Jack Kemp, my dear friend and mentor. He used to always say, the trouble with Democrats, Democrats like jobs. They just hate the businesses that produce the jobs. Okay, he used to always say that. And Republicans should be out there proclaiming these things.
That's right. And if they're not, by the way, because the legacy media and the Democrats are convinced that the economy is in a recession. I keep reading headlines that manufacturing isn't doing well. I mean, that blows my mind because it obviously is. We talked about wages. We talked about production, productivity. By every reasonable measure, manufacturing in the U.S. is having a renaissance. That should be every Republican's first word. Maybe not renaissance. I don't know. Maybe that sounds too foreign. Call it revival, right?
Yeah.
We have
recovery.
Recovery. They should be out there touting this every single day, every time they open their mouth. I don't care what a reporter asks them. Republicans, if you're listening right now, when you show up on those morning shows on Sunday morning, the very first thing you should say is the American economy is recovering from the devastation of the Biden years. The manufacturing has been revived. The American economy is back. Just say it every time, because otherwise the false message that things are not good is just going to be the thing that dominates it. And you're right, when they spend their time talking about Bill Pulte or the Justice Department fund, they're letting the narrative get taken away from them. They will lose if that is what is on people's minds.
And they have a couple of really good numbers. You don't need 50 numbers, but you have 2 or 3 numbers to button down the case. That's the thing. It's right there. You've got it. I love numbers. I mean, numbers make the argument. All right, producers are yelling at me. We're going to take a break. We come back from the break, John. I want to talk about trade reciprocity. I want to talk about Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's speech at the Reagan Library last weekend. I guess it was last weekend. And what that means, because here too, Trump is succeeding in turning around the trade story, which is an integral part of these numbers, as you've written. Anyway, folks, we are talking to John Carney, the business and economics editor of Breitbart. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're talking with John Carney. John's the Breitbart news editor for economics and finance. He's co-author of the Breitbart Business Digest every day with Alex Marlowe, who was on the show last weekend. John, I want to talk about, you write about trade in ways that nobody else writes about trade. It's fantastic stuff. And I just want to mention, last weekend at the Reagan Library, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent gave a speech basically saying America had been sleeping and that we allowed ourselves to be dependent on adversaries and enemies like China for key areas like semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, medical equipment, shipbuilding, other things. Because we were allowing theirs, they were dominating it. Rare earths, that's another one, critical minerals. And Trump finally has put a stop to it with a reciprocity trade. Sometimes tariffs are necessary so we can build our own industries and not rely on our enemies for these crucial areas. It was a speech that got very little coverage. I was right there. Now, I interviewed him, John, right afterwards for a half hour. It was a wonderful interview. But I went back, frankly, after reading your discussion of it. I went back on Monday for the TV show and talked more about it and wrote an article about it because it's so important. I don't want to let it slip by.
I think that's absolutely right, Larry. I think it is a generationally important speech. One of the things that I could have even titled it, What America Forgot. Because Scott Bessent tying the prosperity of America's economy, but not just our economy, but particularly to our manufacturing sector, to our national security, is absolutely essential. If we are not making the things that we need to survive as an independent country, we will not stay an independent country. That's something, by the way, that George Washington said in 1790 in an address to Congress. He said that that a free people's safety and interest requires that they should promote manufacturers as to tend to render them independent from others, particularly for military supplies. Alexander Hamilton, same thing in his report on manufacturing, said that the independence and security of a country is materially connected with the prosperity of manufacturing. That's Bessent's message here. It is a message that is as old as the nation, and it is a message that was largely forgotten. Bessent pointed out that a lot of us, some of us already were remembering this, but it came home to a lot of people during the pandemic, when suddenly we realized that we didn't make things that are absolutely essential, that we couldn't get our hands on even simple things like face masks, but also our dependence from foreign countries for chips meant that our auto plants had to shut down. We have the biggest auto manufacturing in the world, but we can't make it on our own. That's a problem for national security. It is a problem, and so we cannot stay a free and independent country if we are too dependent. I mean, thank goodness. Imagine if we hadn't worked towards energy independence and we had the condition in the Strait of Hormuz happening right now. That would be our economy would be in a recession. We're not, because we are independent energy producers in the United States. We need to take that model and make sure we're applying it across the economy. Look, I don't care if you want to buy some plastic. If your monopoly pieces, the hotels and houses come from abroad, that's fine. But not just the final products, but the components of the products that we need to keep our economy running.
Rare earths.
Absolutely need to.
Rare earths and magnets. And you're right. We look. I was in the White House 2020 COVID. We couldn't even get enough face masks, and we couldn't get enough medical equipment. It was from China, and China. So we have to put our foot down. So the question, John, is in the last minute: is it working? Are we now rebuilding our manufacturing and so forth?
We absolutely are. The tariffs are essential to that. I know a lot of people, don't say, oh, no, I don't like the tariffs, but the tariffs are essential because what they say is it's safe to build a factory in America and you won't have to worry about being undercut by China's predatory pricing. China sees us build factories, and every time what they try to do, this is why we no longer make rare earths in the United States, because every time we tried to revive rare earth manufacturing, China dropped the price to below zero, more or less, and wiped out the people. What we need to do is tell American investors, you can invest in rare earth production in the United States, and we will not allow China's state-sponsored predatory mercantilism to cripple America's ability to make rare earths ever again.
And listen, I think, we've been doing this for about a year, and the trade deficit's starting to come down, and as you chronicled, the manufacturing and the construction is starting to pick up again. Anyway, John Carney of Breitbart News, we appreciate it very much. Folks, I'm Kudlow. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to talk some more about the economy and business on the other side. Please stick around. Lots more coming.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. We're talking a lot about the economy and business today. This is stimulated from yesterday's fantastic jobs numbers. And the business is booming in America. All right, business is booming under Donald Trump. Business is booming under America. Doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. We are seeing a tremendous comeback. In general, this economy is probably now growing somewhere around 3 or 4%. We haven't seen this in a while, at least since the first term, and that was interrupted by COVID, of course. But I'm just devoting more time than usual. We'll do the stock market in the last hour, as we always do. We're going to talk about Iran later with Robert O'Brien, and we'll talk a little polling and politics with John McLaughlin. But I'm emphasizing business and the economy. Two very dear friends, Mike Falkender's here, former Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, teaching school. I don't know if he's still teaching school. You still teaching school in Maryland?
I am. It's we've finished for the semester, but yes, I'm still a faculty member there.
All right, I'm going to enroll. Maybe I'll learn something. And E.J. Antoni, economist, senior fellow at Unleash Prosperity and the Heritage Foundation. Fellas, the first thing I want to say is thank you for being so kind on the TV show yesterday. We only had one round because I was going late. Kellyanne Conway went a little longer. Anyway, you're both great, and I just want to thank you for that, point number one. Now, the first thing I want to raise, I'm going to give you both a whack at it. Start with Mike Falkender, former Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, very powerful spot. Yeah, this fabulous jobs numbers, and right away, interest rates go up, and the media. I mean, you've got here, I'll read, let's see, the Wall Street Journal this morning. U.S. hiring gathers steams. Okay, they got that right. But then they talk about the stock market had a big correction yesterday, particularly the NASDAQ, which was off, I think almost 4% for the day. Now, I don't want to talk about stock market strategy, but here's the point. Fears of rising interest rates collided with worries about artificial intelligence spending on Wall Street Friday, bringing an abrupt and painful end to weeks of gains and sending the NASDAQ composite to its worst day in more than a year. Now, let's put this in context. Year to date, the Dow is up 20%. The NASDAQ is still up 33%. And the S&P 500 is up 24%. So this is just what. So Mike Falkender, interest rates have to go up. Is the Kevin Warsh led Federal Reserve going to have to raise their target rates just because more people are working and businesses investing in the future? Help me out here.
I can't explain this one because it doesn't make sense to me. Everybody's been in fear for the last year about how artificial intelligence was going to eliminate jobs, and yet we've had 3 months in a row of stellar job reports, which seems to suggest there's enormous demand out there for hiring. And I think that's going to continue because, part of that is in healthcare. We have an aging population, and healthcare jobs are going to continue to be a growing sector of the economy. But the biggest part was leisure and hospitality, which indicates to me that businesses think that consumers are out there spending money, that they, despite the temporary increase in oil prices, still have enough consumable income to go out and engage in holiday travel and going out to restaurants. So it seems like the consumer is doing well, and as we have discussed, what Donald Trump is doing is this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to deal with a problem in the Middle East. And once that is finished, and every indication seems to be that it's going to be finished in the next couple of months, if not weeks, the oil futures markets indicate that oil prices are going to come down. We'll get a reversal of the temporary increase in inflation, and therefore there is no reason for the Fed to come in and raise interest rates, because were they to do it, by the time that their interest rate increase would actually have an effect on the real economy, the oil situation will be resolved, and they'll need to be bringing it back. So if I were on the board right now, I would hold on interest rates, allow the situation in the Middle East to get resolved, and allow the productivity improvements that are going to come from AI to augment human capital and create jobs, not destroy them.
Wow. That's a great riff, by the way. Very good riff. I like it. EJ, it's kind of Falkender's hinting at the old saw, EJ. All right, and you got wait. Let me just see. I'm sure I'm going to get Nick Timiraeus of the Wall Street Journal is going to start in with the Fed. Yeah, here it is. Jobs report puts Warsh on the hot seat. All right, page 2. Break over to page 2. Inflation hawks Wall Street see rate hikes as next likely move, testing new Fed chief. I'm just reading this, CJ. I'm not making this stuff up. So let me get this right. More people working more productively causes inflation, and the Fed has to raise rates. This is the Phillips curve. Growth is inflationary. Low unemployment causes inflation. Look, this is the old school. I thought Kevin Warsh was going to change all this, EJ.
Well, here's hoping he does, Larry. Absolutely. And, fortunately or unfortunately, the Fed chair alone does not set interest rates. So Warsh does really have a lot on his plate here, not so much because he's dealing with economic conditions that are just horrible, 6 ways to Sunday, but rather that he's got a board that is 6 ways to Sunday wrong. In other words, they are stuck in the old kinds of Keynesian mindset that the Wall Street Journal is now articulating here. Did we not learn this lesson in the 60s, 70s, and even the beginning of the 80s that the Phillips curve is simply wrong, that people having jobs and being productive and earning an income and growing the supply side of the economy, literally none of that is inflationary. It is by definition deflationary. Look, inflation, as you know, is too much money chasing too few goods, too few products and services in the economy. So if you increase the products and services in the economy by more people working, then that by definition reduces the ratio of money to products and services. Again, it is deflationary. But so many folks at the Fed, and sadly so many folks at the Wall Street Journal, are still stuck in the Keynesian mindset where they don't pay attention to things like the quantity of money. They don't pay attention to the fact that the Fed created literally trillions of dollars out of thin air under Jerome Powell's tenure and has exploded that Fed balance sheet. And Warsh intends, I think, to undo a lot of that. He intends to run off the balance sheet, which they actually stopped running it off. They stopped reducing it towards the end of last year, and they've been increasing it ever since. If there's any reason for inflationary pressure right now in the economy, if there's any blame, it should be laid at the feet of Jerome Powell and his friends at the Fed, who decided to once again embark on another round of balance sheet increases. In other words, purchases of financial securities that amount to nothing more than the Fed creating money out of thin air.
M2 is growing about 5% year on year. That's all. For 25, 30 years, when we had the great moderation, the inflation rate was around 2, really from the mid-'80s until the early 2000s. Growth of money supply was about 6% on average, the whole period. And that was consistent with 2% or less inflation. Scott Grannis from Calafia, he chronicles this out on the West Coast all the time. So you're exactly no. And by the way, Kevin Warsh pays attention to the quantity of money. But you're right, EJ. No, very few people do. I do. You do. I'm sure Michael does. I mean, it's not the only thing, and you have to be careful. Demand for money shifts around, but in the long run, at the extremes, money's important, and we're not seeing it. That's exactly right. But I think, Mike Falconer, you've been in the middle of the fiscal and monetary politics of Treasury. So, Kevin, the meeting is this coming week, right? This is his first Fed meeting, and he'll have his first press conference, I guess. And I think it would be well, let me ask you, do you think he'll come out with a statement that basically says more people working, more economic growth does not cause inflation? I mean, do you think he'll actually say that?
I think he might say it at the press conference. I don't think he'll be able to get it through the FOMC as part of the official statement.
Right.
So, because unfortunately, as we saw with the most recent Fed meeting, Powell's last as chairman, we had 3 regional presidents vote against not the interest rate decision, but vote against the statement. And so I don't think he's going to yet, because he has not done the educating of the old school Keynesians that are on the FOMC right now. I don't think he would be able to get inserted into the statement the notion that large job growth is inherently not inflationary. He's got to be doing some educating and bring them around to his view of how the economy works. But I think that when he gives his press conference and starts talking about why his view is that the economy under President Trump and under the policies he's implementing are disinflationary, are going to create more supply, and therefore in those explanations can try to tell Nick Tamaris and others as to why job growth is not inherently inflationary.
I mean, they're not crazy. The this Reserve Bank president, it's not a conservative board yet, but they're not nuts. I mean, there's people are smart, some better than others. I understand that, but you're right. It doesn't have to be in the press release, but he could make it clear where his, biases are and his analysis is. I think you're exactly right. He'll just, he's the chairman, right? He's the chairman of the board. Let's take a break. Mike Faulkner, among his many credits, by the way, is the top economic guru at the America First Policy Institute and E.J. Antoni Heritage Foundation, Unleash Prosperity. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back. Lots more.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're talking business, which is very strong. American business is strong. Jobs are strong. ISM manufacturers and services are strong. Business CapEx, capital investment, is strong. Productivity is strong. Profits are strong. Taxes are low, relatively low. Government interference and regulation, relatively low. We're talking to Michael Faulkner, who's a former Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. I like this. He's the top economic guru at the America First Policy Institute. We got some work to do, Michael, on that this coming week. And E.J. Antoni, who is the top economist at the Heritage Foundation and senior fellow at Unleash Prosperity. E.J., start with you. I think, as Michael said, as a throwaway, but all these fears about AI not, stopping jobs or killing jobs. Okay, so the verdict isn't 100% in, but when you're looking at these numbers, it's sort of hard to find a negative AI influence. I just thought I'd throw that out there. What do you think?
Larry, I think that's absolutely right, in part because people keep talking about AI as a substitute for labor, but it's also a complement to labor. In other words, the way people have to look at AI, I think, and this kind of helps with the fear associated with it, is that nobody is going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by somebody using AI. And so that's why everybody who has a job for which it's applicable needs to start learning how to use this new tool. I mean, it's like saying a wrench or a hammer is going to replace a carpenter or a plumber. That's nonsense. A wrench or a hammer is going to replace a carpenter. In other words, someone using those new tools is going to replace somebody who's not using those tools. This is the exact same thing. And so what we're seeing right now in the labor market is this incredible period of transition where more people are learning how to use these tools, and that's making them more productive. And I think that helps explain the productivity numbers that we've seen recently, where labor costs are going down, output is going up. Those are all good things. And as people have to spend less on the same products and services they did before because AI is making things more efficient, they now have more left in their household budget to spend on other things. And so you actually end up increasing demand in other areas of the economy, which is going to therefore increase labor demand in other areas of the economy as well. And so, again, all of this is going to balance out. Sure, you're going to have some temporary moves one way or the other in the short run, but in the long run, all of these disruptive technologies, whether it was the internal combustion engine, whether it's the internet, whether it's AI, you name it, always in the long run results in more employment, not less.
Mike Falconer, what about the building out of the data centers? That's construction, it's manufacturing, and it's jobs, isn't it? Energy.
They are, absolutely. And not only that, we do need to keep in mind the national security part of the data centers. One of the things I've been trying to tell audiences when this comes up is the data centers are going to get built. They are going, because we are going to win the AI race against the Chinese. And our biggest impediment is we need to create the energy infrastructure in order to support them. And that's why the work that Doug Burgum and Chris Wright are doing at Interior and Energy in order to get the infrastructure built out, as well as Lee Zeldin at EPA, so that we have environmental policies that enable the creation of new grids, new power generating facilities, new pipelines that are going to enable us to realize all of that efficiency improvement that EJ was just talking about. So these data centers are absolutely important. When we have some of this NIMBYism where some of the municipalities are saying we don't want these in our area, the question I ask is, why do you not want to reduce property taxes for residents? I live right near here, Loudoun County here in the Northern Virginia, Maryland area, and they've been able to enormously reduce property taxes for their local residents because they are the zip code where there's not the zip code, the county with the greatest number of data centers, and the fees the property taxes and fees that are paid to the county have enabled them to cut taxes to local residents. And so, we really do need to do a better job explaining the benefits to local residents. It's jobs, it's property taxes, it's the ability to otherwise fund local and municipal services that these data centers create.
Wow. Cutting property taxes in Maryland, they said it could never be done. Mike Falconer, thank you. EJ and Tony, thank you. You're both absolutely terrific. And again, thank you for your patience with me on the TV last night. Folks, we're going to take a break and then talk about Iran with Ambassador Robert O'Brien, former National Security Advisor. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Back to the Iran war, which, of course, is such an important national security issue. It's also an economic issue because it's affecting oil prices and interest rates and stock markets and so forth. Nothing really new has happened, which is by itself interesting. And now the question is, where do we go from here? President Trump has made a number of statements, but nothing seems to have panned out. So let's ask my very, very good friend, Ambassador Robert O'Brien, former National Security Advisor. He is presently the chairman of American Global Strategies. And Robert, thank you for doing this. So, what's happening? I'll be blunt, as a Trump supporter and as a war supporter, but I'll be blunt here. Right now, what I see is no deal, and I see no military bombing. What I do see is Scott Bessent's economic fury, the blockade, the embargo, seizing of financial assets, bleeding the economy dry, starving the Iranian financial system. That's working. It's working very well. Oil revenues, we looked at it on the TV show, Robert. Iranian oil exports are down from about 2 million barrels a day to under 500,000 barrels a day. That's the blockade. But I don't see, the president talks about a deal. I don't see any deal. And I don't think the president really wants to start military bombing. So I ask you, where are we on this story?
Well, you're 100% right with the work that Scott Besson's doing and the work that the U.S. Navy is doing with the blockade is having a tremendous effect on the Iranian economy. And we have to go back, Larry, to first principles here. What was the original purpose of the campaign, going back to Operation Midnight Hammer? It was to stop the Iranians from getting a nuke, and the president has not wavered on that. Some people have wanted regime change, which would be nice. The president said that would be great. We wanted to cut off the proxies in Hezbollah primarily, but also Hamas in Gaza. The Israelis have done a magnificent job on that. That the Israelis are up on the Litani River in Lebanon, really taking it to Hezbollah. And we've degraded substantially the Iranians' ability to build missiles. So if you look at the president's goals, they've been primarily met except for the nuclear issue, and he says he's not going to stop until the Iranians give up their nukes. Now, what is going on, if we had increased bombing, we'd take out their economic ability to produce and export oil in the future. And we know that if you do that, that'll probably collapse the regime and turn Iran into a stand for the next 50 years. And I think the president is hesitant to take that step and eliminate 1 to 2 to 3 million barrels of oil a day from the world market at this time. So he's doing the slow squeeze, and the squeeze is working. And the Iranians are at the table. They're negotiating over their nuclear stockpile. But it's going to take some time. And the people that don't want to give them time are the Democrats and then the mainstream media. And they're trying to put an artificial deadline on the president to get results when he's just content to sit back and slowly squeeze them. And unfortunately, it has an economic impact on America with the midterms coming up. But I think we need to give the president time and Scott Besson time to let this play out.
Robert O'Brien, why do you think we haven't moved more aggressively to open up the Strait of Hormuz with Project Freedom? We developed this channel as the open channel, relatively open channel, close to Oman, right? Some ships have gone through, a very limited number, small amount of ships. But I would have thought, and I think many people would have thought, that Operation Freedom to reopen Hormuz and to tell Iran, you can't control. I would have thought we would have developed that, but we haven't seemed to. Why is it?
Well, I think that the reason is that the blockade is working so well, and Besson's economic theory is working so well at choking the Iranians, that if we actually re-engage in kinetic activity, that would always give the Iranians a temporary win and divert the attention of the Iranian population, the Iranian leadership from the negotiations and trying to get this thing done and trying to get them to give up their nuclear material, which is the key to going back to fighting. But if we go back to fighting, it's not. I don't think it's going to be limited to Strait, Larry. I think at that point we take out Carg Island, we take out all the production facilities, we take out their export facilities, the rail depots, and maybe perhaps we should do that. And if the Iranians won't come to the table and make real concessions on the nuclear front, we're going to have to do that. But again, I think the president is looking at the long-term implications of taking 1 million to 3 million barrels of oil out of the system, a day, and that's going to cost people money.
About 2 million.
It's worth it to keep the Iranians from becoming North Korea with nukes. But if we could have our cake and eat it too, that's the best case scenario.
I don't think he wants a full-scale bombing, Robert. I don't think he wants it, and I don't think the Iranians. Well, look, these negotiations. I mean, I think Jack Keane is right. They're going to go on forever. That's what Iran does. They're just going to go on forever. Now, I love what Besson's doing. I mean, Besson is the best wartime Treasury Secretary since World War II. I said that at the Reagan Library, and I've repeated it on TV, and I'm saying it here on our radio show. He's doing the Lord's work, and it's working. And the Iranian economy is collapsing. Now, whether the crazy radical Islamic Revolutionary Guard cares is another matter. I mean, maybe
that's the point, Larry. That's a brilliant point that you're making. Is that unlike the Venezuelans or unlike any other country that would come to the table and say no mas and put their hands up and go back to go back to doing business. The Revolutionary Guard, which controls Iran, they truly are religious lunatics, and they don't care about their people. And the question is Besson going to be able to put enough pressure on them that they have to play ball? And we'll see over the next couple of weeks. And I think the president is his inclination is to give that a chance.
Yeah, look, I'm all for it. Here's one thing that I would never be in favor of. We must not give Iran any money at all. Whatever these negotiations are talking about, you read about $12 billion or more, $120 billion in assets that was. I wouldn't give them not a wooden nickel, Robert O'Brien. I mean, we can have a standstill on negotiations, choke off the economy with economic fury, all right, and hold off on other actions. But they should not get a nickel, right? Not a nickel.
100%. And going back to your statement, Larry, the Iranians have never won a war. They've never lost a negotiation.
Right.
They're like a New York real estate guy who's extending and pretending with the banks, and they've run into Donald Trump, who knows that game very well, and I don't think he'll fall for it. But he's got his own real estate lawyers, Woodcock and Kushner, doing the negotiation. They're very familiar with these tactics. But having said that, the Iranians think they can get away with it, and they think the time is on their side. So, I think what we need to do is give Besson, give the president time. Don't fall in with the Democrats and the mainstream media, which are trying to artificially put artificial deadlines on these negotiations. Time is in our favor. The Iranians don't have time. We can survive a long time. We've got our own oil and gas. We've got energy independence, in part because of the work you did in the first term, and that energy independence and energy dominance. The deregulation that you put into place is what's allowing us to get through this crisis. The Iranians can't last. So we need to give the president time. But look, at some point, if the Iranians have to understand if this doesn't go well and they don't go up to nuclear materials, then Jack Keene's position, your position, my position has always been, take them out, put another air tasking order together, and end this entire economy and send it back 1,000 years. But it'd be a shame to see that happen to the Iranian people. If
President doesn't want to do it, he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't. I mean, you can even now. He makes many offhand remarks at press opportunities. He did it yesterday and the day before. He did it. Thursday evening. I read it so carefully. I get the verbatim transcript from Fox News, and you can just see he really isn't talking about bombing. He doesn't want to talk about it. He wants to talk about a deal, okay? But there won't be a deal. I mean, Keene blew the whistle on Fox News. It was a big story in the New York Post this morning. Being replicated elsewhere. I don't think any. I tell you what, Robert O'Brien, stay with me. I got to take a commercial break, and I want to come back. I want to ask you about a whole bunch of other issues,
sure.
the enriched uranium and Israel and so forth. So you can help us through this, folks. We're talking to one of the smartest people you'll know, one of the best foreign policy people you'll know, and one of the calmest, even-handed national security advisors. That being my dear friend Robert O'Brien, who, as a side hustle, is now running. I'm sorry to say, as a side hustle, he's now the chairman of American Global Strategies, which is helping a lot of companies get through this period. I'm Kudlow. We'll take a break and come right back with Ambassador O'Brien.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
No deal, no bombing. Operation Economic Fury is working, though, to crush their economy. Interestingly, Newt Gingrich on the TV show the other night mentioned that Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, who's running the economic embargo and blockade and offshore and taking literally seizing their crypto money up to $1 billion, which is great because these crazy Islamists try to get offshore so they can live a high life. Anyway, we're talking to Ambassador Robert O'Brien, former National Security Advisor, now Chairman of American Global Strategies. So, Robert, let me toss a few things at you. Some people are talking about a stepped-up Israeli operation, the so-called decapitation strikes. In other words, just take their leaders out. You've got the third or fourth level of leaders who've killed all the others, including Ayatollah Jr., and including these, crazy IRGS people. What about a decapitation strike strategy? What do you think of that?
Well, look, I think that if I was in the Iranian regime, I'd be living in a cave, and that might not even be safe. And so I think what's happening is I'm sure the Israelis, I'm sure the Mossad, the Israeli intelligence service, which is very active in Iran and has agents everywhere, is keeping close tabs on where all these fanatics are living and working. And as soon as the balloon goes up again and we engage in kinetic action, I think the very first strike will be at the leadership. So we've seen the Israelis perfect this with Hezbollah and the cell phones and the beepers and the pagers and walkie-talkies. We've seen it at the outset of this war when we took out the entire Iranian leadership when they were having a big meeting all together. So I think the idea of a decapitation strike is definitely on the table. And I think that right now, during this interregnum of a peace, that the Iranians think that they're bluffing us and extending us and stalling us and stonewalling us. I think patterns of life are being developed on all of the new leaders, and there's a database being put together in Tel Aviv, and the decapitation strike will take place at the outset of kinetic activity if again, the Iranians refuse to turn over their nuclear material.
Why don't we strike before some big bombing? Just hit them. Take them out.
We made that option remains on the table.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Trump would like that. Trump likes that stuff, doesn't he?
We did that with Baghdadi. We did that with Soleimani. We did it with Maduro. We did it with the outset of this Operation Economic Epic Fury. So that option is always on the table.
One other point that interests me listening to the chatter this week, President Trump was talking at some length, actually. Let's see, Thursday evening. He was in the Oval, he's signing one thing or another, and of course the press was invited in, and he spoke on issues. Now, Robert O'Brien, he said, he's talking about the enriched uranium and, moving it out of Iran into the United States. And he's talked about how difficult it would be. He mentioned that only the U.S. and China has the equipment to do it. I don't know if this is, true, false, or whatever. Is what he said. And he said it would take several weeks and would be very, very difficult. So it just kind of that's always been a red line of his. All right, the denuclearization, yes, but getting the actual enriched uranium, which can be nuclearized, getting that out of Iran altogether, it just sounded like that's not going to be a red line demand anymore.
Well, it should be, and it still is, as far as I'm aware. But look, the president is right. It's going to be difficult because it's about 1,300 kilograms of ore and material, and that has to go on planes. And with our airmen and soldiers and Marines, packing it up on the big cargo planes and flying it out of Iran to Russia, China, or America, the three countries that could process it and kind of deprocess it. And it's radioactive material, so it's we don't want to expose our pilots and our loadmasters in the back of the planes to harm. So it's a complicated operation. Look, there's no doubt it can be done. So to take that off the table for a second, this is not something that smart people in our military can't do. We can do it, definitely, and we should do it, and I think we will do it. But the president is right. It's a complicated task.
Were you?
It certainly requires Iranian cooperation to some degree.
I didn't mean to interrupt. Were you involved in the State Department or anything with the removal of enriched uranium from Libya?
So that was back in the Bush administration, and I was up at the UN when that operation was happening, and what happened there, Larry, is it wasn't just enriched uranium; it was all kinds of equipment and machinery, and we thought it was going to take I think 7 C-130s, and the Libyans kept at the end of each day they'd open a new vault or open a new cave. It ended up taking us several weeks to do because there was so much more than we expected. And it was, kind of like Alibaba's cave. We clean out one cave, and they assumed we knew, and we're testing them, and so they'd say, okay, now we'll go to the next cave and the next cave, and we took a lot of material out of Libya, and it took significantly longer and many more aircraft than we expected.
Yes, well, there's a lot of lessons learned there. It won't be an easy task in Iran.
No, but it's a critical task, and the idea of leaving it in Iran and putting cameras on it or putting inspection on it, that just doesn't work, because at any time they can kick the inspectors out, turn the cameras off, both of which they've done, and go back to enriching the uranium. So we need to get the nuclear dust, as the president calls it, out of Iran. Yeah. No matter how hard it is. All
right. Well, I'm still supporting whatever. Ambassador Robert O'Brien, we appreciate your wisdom, as always. Thanks for giving us the time. Wonderful stuff, enlightening. Folks, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to do our usual stock market half hour on the other side. Lots to talk about there. I'm Kudlow. God bless America.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Okay, hour 3. We're going to look at the stock market as we always do. By the way, you can hear us over the internet. Live stream us. LarryKudlowShow.com, LarryKudlowShow.com. If that makes your day better, if you can hear us any better. And a quick plug for the TV show, Fabulous Fox Business Network, FBN. Name of the show's Kudlow. Every day, Monday through Friday, 4 to 5 p.m., 4 to 5 p.m. Come and join us. And if you can't make it for some reason, just text your favorite 9-year-old, and she will show you how to DVR the show. Okay, and get it. Now this stock market story. Here we go again. We have tremendous jobs numbers, right? The economy is booming. Profits are booming, right? Everything looks good. American business, it's all good. And then the market cracks up yesterday. Just had a big, maybe it was an overdue correction. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know. We got Jeff Kilberg, CEO of KKM Financial. It's going to help us. We got John Najarian, co-founder of Market Rebellion, who's going to help us. Gentlemen, I guess it's the old saw. If the people are acculturated to believing, financial market people, investors, if the economy is strong, somehow that's going to be inflationary and interest rates have to go up and the Federal Reserve has to tighten interest rates and the media plays into this. And so let me just see the extent. The correction yesterday was 695 on the Dow, 1,122 on the NAS, 201 on the S&P. But I will say, Jeff, before you dive in, I just want to note, and I said this earlier in the show today, year to date, okay, let's use that, you still have big gains. The Dow's up 6%, the NAS is up 11%, 10.6%. The S&P 500 is up 7.9%. The smaller caps, the S&P 400 is up 11.8%. The S&P 600, the smallest, is up 16.1%. And year on year, for heaven's sakes, Dow's up 20%, NAS is up 33%, and the S&P 500 is up 24%. So that's the context. That's the context. All right, Jeff, fire away. Go ahead.
And you're absolutely right, Larry. We're only down 3% off the all-time highs in the S&P 500. So I think what yesterday was true profit taking. You saw the market rally. Remember, just in March when we had the Iranian war, we saw the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100 go into a 10% correction. We had a parabolic rally. A lot of people got scared. A lot of the bears got excited. But then we realized how great earnings were. We had a gangbuster earnings season. We saw the market move higher. Now, semiconductors led that charge. Semiconductors, the ETF SOXX, yes, it was down 10% yesterday, Larry, but still up 80% year to date. So when we look at the emotion, we saw the VIX, and I know Dr. J will talk more about the options market, but we saw the VIX jump 40% yesterday, but it came from 15. So I think we have to really take this in context. There's a lot of emotion in the marketplace, but we are still in a very good spot. The AI theme, we are not walking away from it, but you see traders, you see investors with all the movement. We had Google do a secondary $85 billion offering this week, bigger than the SpaceX IPO, which is just next week around the corner as well. So there's a lot to digest. But when you see a parabolic move like this, it is healthy to see this reset. However, we just live in a very exaggerated, amplified, and maybe it's the zero-dated trading options that we see that amplify these moves. But we are in a good spot. I think I'm still cautiously optimistic because at the end of the day, I look at earnings, the profits, mother's milk, right, Larry?
Yes.
That is the guiding light.
Yes.
And they are so strong.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. So before we get to John, your point, you're not running away from it. That's what you're saying, Jeff Kilberg. You're not running away from it.
Absolutely not.
All right. Now,
No.
Now, John, inside the market, I know what you're going to talk about. The VIX. Well, the VIX is up to 22. I guess it was down 14, 15. So that thing jumped up, but that's not the worst thing I've ever seen. I mean, what happened? Traders see these job numbers. What, and they panic? Too many people working? Americans are working, and I got to sell my stocks? Help me out here.
Yeah, you are correct, and Jeff is, as always, spot on. We have the SpaceX in front of us next Friday, and that's when the stock will trade. We don't know if it'll trade at 10 in the morning, 11 in the morning, or when it finally trades, but we know that they're going to bring it out at roughly $135 a share, and that's after the 1-for-5 split and pre-market, but before it trades. And I think that what happened yesterday was, as again, you and Jeff have been talking about, the move was so big in the semiconductor stocks. What do people tap when they need money to go into something like SpaceX? Even if that money isn't going directly into SpaceX, a lot of people anticipate what's going to happen in the market because that's what the market is. It's a future projection. And I think a lot of people really didn't get scared, but they said, you know what? I'm up 80% on some of these semiconductor stocks. I'm going to pull money off the table because I'm anticipating somebody else who's going into SpaceX is going to be pulling money out of the market next week. So obviously, in my mind anyway, they started pulling money out ahead of it, even if those same big hedge funds that were liquidating in the chip stocks yesterday, even if they're not going to put that money directly into SpaceX. Nonetheless, they're anticipating that a lot of money will be pulled out of the markets to go into SpaceX.
Oh.
So they're just saying, what should I hit first?
Oh.
Well, I'd say data centers, AI, and chip stocks. That's what I would sell. I was not selling yesterday. Did my account go down? Yes, it did. However, I think that's a very temporary move that'll be over. If not Monday, it'll be over by Tuesday. And then people will be, again, that FOMO, that fear of missing out, will be carrying the market higher with the SpaceX IPO.
John, just give me another couple of paragraphs for our listeners, particularly on SpaceX. Now, this is Elon's thing, right?
Yep.
All right. So what do we got
AI.
going here?
Yep. It's XAI. It is the satellite company that he calls Starlink, all wrapped up into this. And at some point, and he's even discussed this publicly recently, there might be a possibility that he tries to roll Tesla into this, and the Boring Company, and many of these others. But for right now, I saw, Larry, that Google just signed a $900+ million a month contract with Elon for his data centers.
Wow.
So, yeah, and that's public knowledge. I'm not disclosing something that I shouldn't, but not another $900 billion. So in other words, another basically 12, call it close to $12 billion a year on top of the $18 billion that they declared in their S1. So this company is going to be rocking and rolling, and people are going to chase it. That's what I think is going on, Larry.
And Doc, they just did the Anthropic deal. SpaceX sold another $1.25 billion of compute per month to Anthropic. That was probably despite Sam Altman over at OpenAI. But yeah, they are reading the register at SpaceX before they even brought it out.
Wait, what do you say? Jeff, who sold Anthropic?
So just like Dr. J was saying that Google is investing $925 million a month to buy compute from SpaceX, 2-3 weeks ago, SpaceX also announced, public knowledge, that they are selling $1.25 billion a month of revenue to extra compute up in outer space to Anthropic. And that reason is because probably Elon Musk lost the lawsuit against Sam Altman, against OpenAI. But nonetheless, you're seeing SpaceX continue to sell compute because that's the bottleneck, Larry. No one can get enough compute. Look at Andy Jassy over at Amazon. He can't spend enough CapEx because he's already matched the ROI. And he publicly stated that the more we spend at Amazon, the more we're going to make. So it's remarkable to see it's a lack of compute, a lack of getting that. And that's where Elon and SpaceX will probably serve that void.
Well, I think personally, by the way, one of the, I've been in the TV and radio hosting business for a very long time. Okay, coming up to 25 years. One of my highlights, fellas, was a little more than a year ago. It was last March of 2025. I interviewed Elon. Okay, just sitting right across from him for 20.
It was a fabulous interview.
Well, you're very, very kind. In the Indian Treaty Room in the old executive office building in the White House complex, and we were sitting on high chairs, those awful beach chairs, which are so uncomfortable, for 25 minutes. And I got to tell you, it was one of the highlights of my career, honestly. I mean, and let me say also, you fellas know a lot more about this than I do. I try to follow it a little bit. But Elon Musk is a genius. Okay, now I dealt with him in the White House in the first term, but he's a genius, and I would not bet against him. Okay, full stop. I would not bet against him.
No one who's smart would bet against him. And will SpaceX go straight up? No, it won't go parabolic. But could it over the next several years? I mean, Larry, right now I'm at F1 over in Monaco. Everybody over here is asking me, number one, about SpaceX, and number two, they're saying, well, John, we can't get data centers over here in Europe. It takes multiple years of permitting and all the rest to get them. Well, that's why all these miners like Hut 8, like Z Squared, ZSQR, and I'm involved in both of those companies. I'm not in the management, but I'm involved with those, and I own them. I think that people are trying to jump ahead of the permitting and the power that it would take for them to be able to participate in these big data centers. And in Europe, it can't be done. It's going to be 5-6 years for these guys to catch up. And that's why anybody who's got compute and power in the U.S., they can leapfrog over that permitting process and get these things up and running faster in the U.S.
And just before we take a break, this is so interesting, by the way. Thank you for all this, gentlemen. But Jeff Kilberg, I read and hear people say, well, all this capital investment that's happening by all of these companies, okay, by the AI companies, by the chip companies, by the et cetera, even the software companies, it's too much investment, quote unquote. It won't be put to work, quote unquote. I just think that's economic nonsense. Of course it's going to be put to work. What did John just say? We're the world leader in this, and we need to be the leaders in data centers, and we need to be the leaders in all manner of the development of AI. We want to beat China. And Europe is, in the rearview mirror. Of course it's going to be put to work, and it wind up put to work profitably.
And that's a brilliant point you bring up, Larry. And I think back in 2024, even 2025, it was speculative. It was speculative in nature to see how much money these companies were spending on their capital expenditure, better known as CapEx. But now, in last quarter, the earnings report for last quarter, which, by the way, was 27.7% year-over-year growth. That blew the doors off of expectations, which was high at 13%. And to put it in context, Larry, the average year-over-year growth for earnings per share is 8.4%. So we're 3-4 times better than that. And why is that? It's to your point that it's no longer speculative what they spend. It's realized revenue. It's real profits. And Andy Jassy at Amazon articulated that 3 months ago. So that's where I get fired up. I'm cautiously optimistic. And I'll go back to Coach Holtz back in the day. Coach Holtz always told us never to flinch. Now is not the time to flinch. One down day does not provide an opportunity to flinch.
Boy, do we miss him. And boy, did I love him, just as an aside. Fellas, we got to take a quick break. Jeff Kilberg, CEO of KKM Financial. John Najarian, co-founder of Market Rebellion. You guys are fabulous. We're coming right back, folks.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So we're talking about the stock market correction with truly two of the best, Jeff Kilberg, CEO of KKM Financial, and John Najarian, who was the co-founder of Market Rebellion. Interestingly, Jeff, all right, so bond rates went up yesterday. 8-10 basis points. The 10-year is 453, according to this sheet. I wouldn't exactly say we're exploding into double-digit interest rates here, for heaven's sakes. And one other editorial point, my view, Kevin Warsh, the new Fed chairman, does not believe that strong jobs and growth causes inflation. All right, he's going to change. It'll take him time, I grant you that. But his influence on Federal Reserve thinking, he does not believe that. Inflation is caused by too much money chasing too few goods. He's not going to jump to raise rates just because more people are working or the economy is doing well. It's going to be a different Fed. And I think, investors perhaps don't understand that yet, but they will. They should not panic over this, higher interest rate argument. The Fed's not going to raise rates.
Agreed, Larry. And I think that was a premature reaction to a very strong jobs report on Friday. And a lot of the investors said there's no more interest rate cuts coming in 2026. There's actually going to be an interest rate hike. I don't believe in that narrative. I think Kevin Warsh is going to be pragmatic. He has some inflationary data coming up. I don't think inflation is going to be hot by any means. It continues to come lower. But what's fascinating is that at the end of 2026, we are going to see Kevin Warsh get under his feet and have the ability to lower rates. He did not come into the office to raise rates. He'll find other ways, I believe, to tighten the balance sheet and bring rates down. But the 10-year, the good news is it's a tail when it's coming down. Crude oil cracked under $90. If that gets under $80, that's the all clear to get us out of Iran. But there are some tailwinds coming here once we kind of digest all these massive IPOs in the month of June.
John Najarian, just in the last minute, the innards of the market, the technical aspects of the market, how do they look to you?
Well, again, Jeff did a great job describing the earnings, the mother's milk, as you like to say, Larry.
Mm-hmm.
And it truly is. I mean, when you're looking at the S&P 500 companies and you're seeing estimates like 24% earnings growth, I mean, that's virtually unheard of.
Yeah.
But we're seeing it. We're seeing them beat every single stock that has put up numbers, has beaten, and it's in the high 80 percentile of those stocks that are reporting. I think that continues, Larry. And again, that means that if you want to fight against this market, you're on the wrong side.
All right. Jeff Kilberg, thank you. John Najarian, thank you. Terrific stuff, folks. We're going to do some money in politics on the other side.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're going to do some money in politics today. We're going to go three ways. We went long on Iran with Robert O'Brien. So Ace pollster and friend John McLaughlin has agreed to stick around and join us, CEO of McLaughlin and Associates. And we have the great Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, as always. And we have the equally great Steve Moore, who is WABC radio host of More Money, coming up right after this show on most of these same radio stations. I appreciate everybody's patience. Sometimes, in this game, you have to move things around. I want to start with John McLaughlin. And I guess the question I have, will voters in California be fed up with one-party, rule, one-party socialist rule, with all the problems that we always talk about, the economic problems, the tax problems, the energy problems, fire problems, the homeless problems, the drug problems? My God, a once great state, a fabulous place that is no longer fabulous. You've got Spencer Pratt running for mayor, and you got Steve Hilton running for governor. I don't know what the final totals are. Maybe the Democrats are stealing the numbers, but those guys are going to be on the ballot for governor and mayor. John, in brief, lead us off. Is there going to be a revolt against one-party rule?
Well, there is right now, because when we did the poll for the California Post the Thursday before the Tuesday primary, the majority of voters in the primary said like well over 50% said California's on the wrong track. 50% disapprove of Gavin Newsom, but they were split whether they were going to go for and we had Steve Hilton ahead and Steyer or Becerra. And in LA it was worse. You had 2/3 of the voters said the city's on the wrong track. They disapprove of Karen Bass, and that's a city with only 17% Republicans. Now, the bad thing is someone like the RNC needs to audit these late votes to make sure there's real human beings coming in, because they're still taking in ballots. And they stop counting on election night, and all of a sudden there's hundreds of thousands of ballots showing up where tens of thousands in a batch are voting for Democrats and no Republicans. So there is active ballot harvesting going on. We just need to make sure there's real voters on the other end of that. So it could be. I mean, it's the fact that Becerra is now in first and Pratt's now in first, and they haven't declared a second. It looks like the system where they tried to prevent Republicans from making the November ballots may work for them because of this ballot harvesting.
You really,
technique.
Both of those guys, Pratt, Spencer Pratt, and Steve Hilton could be taken off the ballot?
They have not advanced yet.
Oh, my God.
So in the L.A. mayor's race, it's 35 for Bass with 71% and 28 Pratt, 25 Rahman. She's coming up. Oh. And in the governor's race, it's the same things going on with Steyer's coming up on Hilton.
Liz Peek, we need Save America Act. Somebody's got to fix this broken election system.
Well, I think it's just horrifying. I'm interested, John, when you did your polling, could you identify what issues in particular people were so irate about? Is it the economy? Is it crime? What are the issues that Hilton and Pratt have gotten traction on?
Well, statewide, it was cost of living and housing costs. But also you had in L.A., it was they were saying mental illness, homelessness was the top issue, followed by housing. But the mental illness and homelessness is more security issues. It's like a crime issue because they've got people in the neighborhoods that are drug addicts and dangerous.
Yeah. So, Larry, going back to the SAVE Act, I think you and I have talked for months about how Republicans should ditch the SAVE Act and just do voter ID. That's it. Make Democrats vote against voter ID, which is approved of by over 80% of Americans. Once again, SAVE Act has gone down in flames. They need to get something done on election security, and time is running out.
I got it. I am going to have you realize all your dreams. Listen to this.
Good.
Representative Julie Fedorchak. I don't know her. She's from North Dakota. She has submitted a bill called Save America Through Real ID Act. Okay, it'll establish, listen to this, a grants encouraging states to require federally mandated real IDs to vote. That would be an alternative.
So it can be put in a reconciliation bill because it's funding.
Yes, this is what I have been talking about this for weeks. All right, and it'll be an alternative to the proof of citizenship and voter ID mandates in the original Save America Act, but it refers to federal verification standards for state-issued photo identification that ensure the holder is a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident. That's all it does. And it allocates $50 million each year from 2027 through 2031. She's coming on the TV show Monday to talk about it. So it's a fiscal measure, grants, $50 million a year. All right, that'll meet the Byrd rule, and you can use that as a backdoor way. It won't have all the citizenship, paraphernalia requirements. It's just a photo ID and a grant to insure it. Okay, she's from Julie.
Excellent.
Julie Fedorchak, North Dakota. Right, you have to love that. North Dakota. What do they got? Fewer.
There's no voter fraud at all.
There's fewer people than 3 apartment buildings. But you know what I mean. But anyways, that could be the answer to our dreams. Honestly. Now,
agree.
Steve Moore. You would hope, though, with all this, the Republicans would get a decent reconciliation bill. And, Steve, while I'm at it, you would hope that Republicans, somebody other than President Trump, would talk about the good economy, which is creating jobs, business is terrific, and wages are high, etc. Kellyanne Conway was on the TV yesterday, and she said the jobs report and things like it should be the GOP's biggest weapon. But, Steve, they're not talking about this. They're not talking about anything. They're too busy quarreling with each other and quarreling with Trump, over stuff that doesn't matter.
Well, first of all, Larry, do not make fun of Julie Fedora. She's going to be a senator someday.
Oh, you know it. I didn't know her. I never heard of her.
No, she's great. And, North Dakota only, I think, has one congressional member. So anyway, but look, I think, one other thing. Can you imagine if the election for governor came down to Becerra versus Tom Steyer? I mean, talk about a Sophie's choice.
Right.
I guess I'd have to go with Fedora. I mean, I'd have to probably go with Becerra over that on that one. But that would be a tragedy, by the way, if the voters in November in California don't have a real choice. Economy, you and I have talked about that. I mean, it is unbelievably durable, resilient. It's hot right now, and my line is that the American economy is hotter right now than the New York Knicks. So
no, nobody is hotter than the New York Knicks. Sorry, Steve.
I knew you were going to say that, Liz. But that was a hell of a game last night, by the way. No, look, there's nothing to complain about. We got manufacturing, we got construction, we got investments. I mean, there's the things you talk about every night on the show. We got jobs, we got higher wages. I mean, the Democrats are really running out of things to complain about. And I think you're going to start to see a real shift in public opinion, too, in the next, well, John's the expert on this, but I think people are going to start to be looking at the economy in a much more favorable way.
John, talk about that because, look, Republicans' bread and butter is always the economy. When they talk tax cuts and economic growth and jobs, they win. But, when they talk about denying ballroom funds for Donald Trump or Justice Department defense funds, they lose. And right now, that's where they are, at least in the Senate. House, maybe less so. But I didn't see anybody. Wait, one last point. I was looking around, scanning the media outlets that we try to follow. And I was looking for Republican leaders other than the president. President came right out and touted the jobs. But other than the president, I can't find a Republican leader of impact or significance touting the report and the fact that the economy is growing at 3% plus. And as Steve said, it's manufacturing, it's construction, it's data centers, it's across the board, and wages are doing very well. Where are they, John?
They're missing in action, and Donald Trump, in our last monthly poll of 1,000 likely voters, had a 48 job rule, 47 disapprove. What was distressing was the generic ballot for Congress was only 42% Republican and 46% Democrat. So there's a gap between the Trump voters and the Republicans. And Larry, remember last month I asked a question that what do they prefer, to get the economy moving again? A small reconciliation bill that only passes spending bills, 26% of all voters. A pro-growth reconciliation bill that cuts waste, fraud, and corruption would provide proof of citizenship and voter ID and expands middle-class tax cuts. All voters, 57%. And it wins with independents, 53-28, moderates, 53-29. I mean, why aren't they doing this? They're killing themselves. And Trump's not on the ballot.
John, send me those poll results. I'll put those in the hotline on Monday. Those are amazing.
Steve, but Steve Moore, you can put in an outline, which is wonderful, but Steve Moore, why aren't every night I talk about a big fat pro-growth reconciliation? You talk about it, Forbes talks about it, Laffer, everyone, but they're not doing it. Why?
I don't have a good answer, Larry. I mean, every time I go to the Hill and talk, I mean, the one guy who's really talking about this is Ted Cruz.
Yes.
But the rest are pretty mum on this. And I agree. Look, even if you can't pass it, put these issues on, like indexing capital gains.
Yes.
I don't know if you asked voters on that one, John, but this is a fairness issue and a growth issue. And make the Democrats, make the case to people why you should be, when you sell your home and half of the gain is due to inflation, why you have to pay a tax on that?
Right. Right, and you realize the average voter has a $16,000 credit card balance, and they're paying or $6,000 credit card balance, 16% interest. Interest rates got to come down too. So it's just the average person isn't feeling that the Republicans are doing anything for them.
Yeah, and by the way, yesterday, the RLSC or RCL, whatever it is, the Republican fundraising group, senatorial fundraising group, sent out a thing saying, we're doing all this for working families and, creating a booming economy. How? What have they done? I mean, I really almost threw my phone across the room. I was so angry about it.
They're cutting back on the Justice Department Defense Fund.
I mean, honestly,
they're stopping Trump's ballroom. How interesting.
Deal.
Right. I mean, how stupid. I mean, it's a circular firing squad in the Senate right now. That's what's happening.
Dead weight.
All right. Let's take a break on that. All right. John McLaughlin, Ace Pollster, Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, Steve Moore, Unleashed Prosperity. Steve's More Money Show on radio coming up after this show. I'm Kudlow. I'll be right back.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Talking money and politics. We got Steve Moore, whose radio show More Money pops up right after this one on most of these same radio stations. We got the great Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, and Ace Pollster, John McLaughlin. Steve Moore, question. We're talking about reconciliation, these fiscal packages. So you have J.D. Vance, I think, doing a very good job on the whole fraud issue. Fraud, stealing, corruption. Emmett Oz is doing a great job. Now, my question quickly is, how can we incorporate the savings? In other words, are we going to cut back on the grants and the money? How is that going to show up? Let's say in a fiscal bill, and really bring down government spending as well as corruption.
Well, that's a great point you're making because, we know there's $500 billion to $1 trillion you could save by just getting rid of the corruption. So why not use that as an offset to, quote, pay for, unquote, the, capital gains reduction, maybe Laffer's talking about maybe, reduction in payroll tax or something like that. I love that idea. And you combine two good ideas because people hate fraud and they love tax cuts and aim it at the middle class and aim it at investment. It would be a very positive thing. I want to go back to one thing when you were talking to John McLaughlin about California. Something very important that we covered in the hotline happened on Tuesday, which there were 5 tax initiatives that were put on the ballot, Larry, across the state, from north to south, from San Francisco down to San Diego, some of the most liberal areas of the state, and every one of them went down in flames. Americans do not want tax increases next. If Californians don't want tax increases, I guarantee you the rest of the country does. So that was a big, big thing. And by the way, 65% of the voters were Democrats. Even Democrats don't want higher taxes.
Well, are these guys... Steve Hilton and Spencer Pratt. I know Steve Hilton very well. I don't know Pratt, but are they talking about taxes, for example? I mean, it seems to me that'd be a very interesting topic for them.
John may know the answer to that. I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
I've seen it. They're talking about change in the election, particularly Steve Hilton, and the taxes are part of it, a component of it that they're too high, and they gotta change or cut it.
What about Prop 13 type stuff? Reagan's Prop 13.
Yes.
Well, no one will repeal that. Remember when Warren Buffett tried that with Arnold when Arnold was running in the recall?
But I'm just saying, I get that. But
another Prop 13.
That's right. What I'm saying is, to Steve's point, if you hate taxes, then let's figure out let's bundle it into a tax cut of some kind, or at least a tax limitation, just to make the point.
That would they should. It's like. But it's like they haven't done it yet, so it's like they got to worry about just making the runoffs because the system is rigged. So it's like it's really bad.
Liz Peek, I appeal to you. You're in better judgment. No one on this panel seems to want to cut spending. All right, no one wants to really dig in. I want to reduce all of the federal money going to these Medicaid programs and Obamacare programs and other assorted welfare programs because Democrats are stealing it from taxpayers. So I appeal to your senses, Liz Peek, your financial restraint senses. We must cut spending.
Yeah, and that's for sure. And there's very little appetite for doing that. But certainly when the federal government employee count is down by hundreds of thousands,
yes.
When you're beginning to eliminate fraud, when you demand that people on some of these welfare programs like Medicaid actually have to go to work, and there's workfare involved. I mean, hopefully that does begin to at least bend the arc of the upward trajectory of these programs, Larry, because it is going to bankrupt our country. They have got to change, and Democrats won't hear about it. So, once again, I mean, I hate to bang a drum on this because I'm very enthusiastic about Republican reign, but they just haven't got much to show for it right now.
Emmett Oz said, he's on Fox, 35% of the Obamacare enrollees are not legitimate. 35%. I don't know how much money we're spending. How much money we spend on Obamacare? I don't even know.
$1 trillion.
Right.
Yeah.
See, so Emmett Oz is really an interesting character here. He's doing the Lord's work. And they even gave him the press room the other day, which was just fascinating. Yeah. And when they asked him questions out of his channel, he says, out of my lane, which is very good. That means he's learning how to play the game. But my point is, listen, put it on the line. These people are stealing money. These local people in L.A., and they're stealing taxpayer money. So the GOP, in addition to cutting taxes and growing the economy, should get on that horse.
Absolutely. Do you know what the fraud rate is? Well, I did some analysis a couple of years ago when I called the credit card companies, insurance companies, so on. You know what the fraud rate is in the private sector on programs like this? 2 to 3%. And you're talking about 30%
right.
at the federal level.
Right. You got.
By the way, these companies said, look, if we had 4 or 5% fraud rates, we'd be out of business. And the government has 25% fraud rates. That means
80% of the people in these L.A. hospices come out healthier than they went in. There's something wrong with it. I mean, I'm glad they're living, but that's not the point of it. John McLaughlin, thank you for your patience. Liz Peek, your contribution. Steve Moore, as always, Steve's radio show's coming up. I'm Kudlow. We'll talk to you next weekend.
Thanks for listening to The Larry Kudlow Show. You can hear The Larry Kudlow Show Saturday mornings at 10. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
One summer moment can change a child's life. Through Toys for Tots Give and Go initiative, your support provides books, games, toys, and outdoor adventures that spark curiosity, creativity, and a love of nature. Whether it's fishing, learning a new sport, reading under a tree, or playing with friends, these moments build confidence and lifelong memories. For too many children, those moments never come. You can help change that this summer. Visit toysfortots.org. Toys for Tots, delivering hope beyond the holidays.